Hello, and welcome to this little channel. Thank you everyone for supporting the channel up until now. Today we will continue the story of Suzuki Satoru as Ain't Soul Gown in the New World.
In Yggdrasil's setting, an elf's lifespan was 1,000 years. They age up quickly in the first 10 years and then in the last 10 years, I think. I don't remember the exact details, but I think it's something like that. Or am I wrong? Also, if they supposedly gave birth once every decade, if we consider 200 years old as the start of adulthood and 400 years old to be when infertility sets in, 20 children, I want to learn more details about this in the future. Then, if I were to return you to your former village, where would I go? Elves started looking at each other. I see, of course they will not talk about it. It's important information after all. After a while, one of the elves inquired hesitantly. Excuse me, but are we going to be sent back to our homes? Noticing their strange choice of words, Aints realized his mistake. That's right, I forgot that your village was attacked by the theocracy. These elves were not soldiers, just people who were living in the village that were captured during the theocracy's attack on it. From their point of view, it was painful to return back to that place. Plus, their safety could not be guaranteed. Let's do this. Instead of returning you to your village, we'll take you to a safe place. Do you have any such place in mind? A village with your relatives, or if there aren't any, how about the capital? The capital. Please forgive us. We don't know any other place except the surroundings of our village. I wonder which place can be considered a safe place. These elves were unfamiliar with information outside of their village, but that wasn't something limited to these girls. It's the same for the villagers from the kingdom or the empire. People in this world mostly leave out their entire lives at their place of birth, especially for those without education. Though they would barely know about their neighboring cities, the other cities in their country might as well be foreign lands to them. While Aints was pondering over this, the elves spoke again. Excuse us, but are we really going to be sent back outside? That's what I plan to do. If we are to engage in diplomacy with the Elven country, keeping you here would make the other side dissatisfied. You understand, don't you? I kept you here until now as an emergency measure, but it will be hard to continue doing so. However, I am not cruel enough to release you in a land under the control of the slain theocracy. That's why I asked you for a safe location. Although Aints did not intend to be the emissary, returning these three back safely would probably help with future diplomacy. Seeing that the elves wanted to say something, Aints asked them, "What's the matter?" Aints moved his gaze to the drinks in front of the elves. There was no way that was the reason, right? Why? I can understand if you don't want to tell me, but please do if possible. About that, the elf representing them took a quick look at the twins. Aura, Mary, it looks like your drinks are nearly finished. Why don't you go and get some more? Okay, understood Ain't-sama, let's go Mary. Splendid. Aints admired Aura's quick wit. If he was in Aura's place, he wouldn't have understood so quickly that he was being told indirectly to get away for a while. Or perhaps his working adult senses would have instantly understood it. One could stand to reason that Aura was better than Albedo, or Demiurge at reading the mood. Aints could imagine Demiurge with a grin saying, "So that's what it is, Ain't-sama." Those two would completely misunderstand my intentions, to the point where I sometimes doubt if they are doing it intentionally. Or are they really doing it intentionally? Aura dragged away the still puzzled Mary by his arms. Aints spoke after they were distant enough. Can you say it now? Why yes, the elf replied, after confirming that the twins are far enough from them with a quick glance. A dark elf's sense of hearing was better than a human's, and rangers like Aura were even better at it. The elf before him was probably whispering with that in mind, but it was highly likely that Aura could still hear them. We are already used to our life here, and we cannot return to that life again. This place, Aura-sama and Mary-sama's house, is the best. Aints initially lowered his volume to match the elves, but he let out his usual voice at the sudden surprise. He thought that they were joking for a moment, but after he saw the other two nodding seriously, he understood that was their true sentiment. First, it seemed like the food quality in Nazarick was on a different level. Elves normally ate fruits, meats, and vegetables by either roasting or boiling them. The amount of passion Nazarick puts into its food was completely different. The elves said with certainty that they were not confident they could ever adjust to their former lives after getting used to the food here. By the way, pizza seemed to be their favorite. I see. Culinary diplomacy does not seem like such a bad idea. Being able to access such fine cuisine should be a point of appeal. Are they dwarves or what? The elves also had other reasons. The level of safety here was also completely different. Even if they lived in a moderately safe place like a village created by druid magic, it was impossible for a year to pass without any casualties occurring due to monsters. In contrast, one could sleep peacefully in Nazarick even without having someone to guard the night. They had a lot to say, but if it was something like this, there was no need to get the twins away from here. As Aints thought that there should be more reasons, he added, and being able to serve those two is a joy. Aints nodded empathetically. Those two were of similar race to the elves and were cute children to boot. They probably had doubts about serving children, but Aura's and Mary's personality had likely won them over. Even Aints would select the twins if he was asked which of the floor guardians he would like to serve. No, if someone did ask him, he would probably say something like, "I can't choose because everyone is wonderful." But if he was being honest, it would be those two. Next in line might be Caucatus. He really didn't want to serve the others. Still, he thought this was something that could be said in the twins' presence. Although he thought that they had something else to say, it seemed like this was the end of their talk. Honestly, I don't understand at all. Wasn't it fine for the twins to hear this? Was there something in the previous conversation that would get them reprimanded by the twins? Well, whatever. Very well. Then I want you to continue working in Nazarick as you have done until now. There was no reason to refuse their wish. The elves looked happy upon hearing Aints' response. It didn't seem like they were putting on an act to flatter Aints. Although, if we are talking about employing you formally, we will need to discuss salary and welfare first. I will order someone to look into it. It appeared that the elves did not understand what Aints was talking about, but this was an important issue to him. How these elves were to be treated would become an important factor when they established friendly relations with the dark elves in the Elven country. They could say that after freeing the elves from slavery and looking after the elves were just paying back what they had received. But there was a limit to such excuses. Their present situation of uncompensated labor mirrored the practices of a black company. He did not want the dark elves that might visit here in the future to get such an impression. In that case, he just had to use these three to set Nazarick's precedent as a white company. Aints took a quick glance at the maids around them. They were cupping their hands behind their ears as if to hear them better while trying to make it look like they were resting their chins in their palms. They were not at all concerned about their appearances. He didn't feel like reproaching them since he thought that it was just a display of their loyalty, but he at least wanted them to hide it a little better. I should make a contract with these elves as soon as possible. Also, should I try extending the white company treatment from these elves to the regular maids? He could try, but he was afraid that the maids who just wanted to work more would direct their ire at the elves who were the cause for the increase in their leisure time. Of course, he didn't think they would go as far as killing the elves, but he needed to be careful if he decided to extend the treatment to the maids. Leaving that aside, I want to borrow your help in our excursion to the Elven country. I want you to act as guides, if possible. Of course, Aura and Mary will also come with us. It's just that we're not familiar with Elven etiquette, so it would help if you were to act as our intermediaries. The elves looked at each other and shook their heads. Forgive us, but we don't have confidence in acting as guides. As for being intermediaries, although we have traveled around our village, we are also not sure about things like etiquette. Is that so? Sorry. You don't need to bow. It would be bothersome to visit an unknown place without a guide, but it was not like he was sure these elves could be of use. If he was going into the unknown anyway, it would be better to not force them to come along. They might even end up becoming a burden. Aints turned around and beckoned Lumiere over. After she brought her face closer to him, Aints whispered just a bit more and lifted his cup. Of course, the contents of the cup were not touched at all. Just to be sure, he gestured in the twins' direction with his eyes. He thought he was being a bit obtuse, but it seemed like she quickly understood and left with a simple "excuse me." And what is the general opinion on dark elves among you elves? They are splendid beings. Aints wrinkled his brows at the instant, somewhat suspicious response. He would be happy if that was how dark elves were thought of, but their answer felt off. Aints could immediately think of the reason why. It was about Aura and Mary. No, that's not it. I am asking about the relations between the dark elf race and your race of the elves. They are splendid beings. That's not. He probably couldn't do anything about this kind of kowtowing. After being treated as subordinates of the twins for so long, they couldn't possibly say something like, dark elves are an inferior race after all. Rather, it would be scarier if they could say something like that. As I have mentioned before, I want to open diplomatic relations with the elf country. I also want to entrust this to the twins. That's why I want to know how elves as a whole look at dark elves. I don't want them to be mistreated if Elven society holds negative opinions of dark elves. So what do you think? I need an honest answer.